Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
कैसे फराज भाई?
Alhamdulillah, how are you?
Ifraz bhai, how are you? Good?
Yes, sir.
Jazakallah, sir, for your availability and for agreeing to deliver this presentation.
Yeah, no problem.
Not like you didn't have you had any choice, I guess. Yeah, you had.
It seems that way.
Yeah.
Let's see. Is it better if I don't blur my background? Let's do that. I'll change it.
इमरान भाई ज्वाइन कर रहे हैं?
Imran Bhai was planning on joining, but he was saying that he has another Jamaat meeting around that time, so he will probably drop out. But he will definitely join.
Everybody has Jamaat meetings.
Yeah. So, Ifraz bhai, can you please check if you can share your screen without any issues?
Yeah. One second.
और तो किसी को वेटिंग रूम से एंटर नहीं करना, but you have your co-host, so you guys decide. MSGUR entered the waiting room. Someone very keen to make money.
We can enter people, is fine. It's just
कर लें, देखें.
Yeah.
आपने जब किया था तो registration मांग रहा था?
No. Just let them.
Registration तो ठीक है, off थी, ठीक. Okay.
Yeah. Well, the person just dropped out, I guess. Yeah.
ठीक है.
I guess. All right. Let's see if it works. You can see it, right?
Yeah, perfect. Yes. Otherwise,
So whose idea was this? Imran Bhai?
it's a national initiative. The plan is to have him and I went over and we are planning on having 6 of these webinars in this year. So
Oh, okay.
you are the first one. Again, same idea, probably different type of businesses, and then some like skill development, like let's say Excel. One can be on summer internship, resume, those type of things. So
You need a guy for Google Sheets.
Yeah. So yeah, the idea is that like majority of the population can benefit from the webinar. So that's
Yeah, hopefully. I'll try to do my best to help people, I guess.
When did you start this Turo business?
2018.
Mm.
That was a big transition year for me.
Mm.
आपकी regular job भी है, day job?
I have my own IT business, so I'm a managed service provider. So in 2018, I was working for somebody else. Then I left and I started my own.
Mm.
और जो laundry business है उसमें भी काम करते हैं, help कराते हैं?
Yeah, that's automatic. That's my parents.
That's a given.
Yeah, it might be closing soon though.
अच्छा. Yeah, I remember the first time I met you. I met you, but the first time I actually had interaction was during Hazur's 2018 tour for doing laundry of Buffalo members. For the longest period, your name was, I had saved your name as Faraz Laundry.
What?
The laundry guy.
And now he's a tree planting guy, so I guess he likes that type of thing next to his name.
I like to connect the actions with the with what I do, I guess.
Yeah. So Radha, where are you from?
From Wisconsin.
Okay.
Live here, central Wisconsin.
All right. Good dairy business there, right?
We can start a cheese house here.
Yep.
So. How's your father-in-law doing, Faraz bhai? I kind of miss him.
He's doing well. I think he was a little bit sick during Hazur's tour, but halfway through I think he got COVID. But no, alhamdulillah, he's doing well. He always stays busy.
I got to spend a lot of time with him.
Oh yeah, because he was definitely there for.
He was with us all the time, from Fajr to Isha. Actually, later than Isha. So.
Yep.
So, आप Zoom manage कर रहे हैं अरसलान भाई साहब?
जी.
पहले भी webinar manage किया है आपने?
First time.
First time. चलो.
Yeah.
Don't
I was also
just
thrown under the bus, just like Frostbite.
So just keep an eye on. We still have Zoom bombings occasionally. Mm-hmm. One random person would join. Probably some randomly. We had a few times, so just keep an eye on that. Mm-hmm. Also, members can definitely keep their video open. They can turn it on anytime they want.
Okay.
We can't stop them. So this has also happened that they were showing some indecent photos or videos.
Okay, so now for this meeting, is everybody on mute, or like what are the rights for them? So
they can unmute themselves.
Okay.
This is the setting right now. We can turn it off.
Okay.
If you want. So only if you unmute, then there's more work for you.
Okay. Well, yeah, we can keep it this way. It's simple.
Also, we have chat, which is open.
Okay.
If you want to turn it off, you can also do it. You can.
Although you're coming to FQC on Saturday?
For Willingboro.
Yeah.
Yeah, I invited myself.
Yeah.
So maybe you're from Willingboro?
I'm from North Jersey.
We need more of a Karma in North Jersey. I'll have to make a visit.
Yeah. I don't even know who's a Caramel guy.
That's the problem.
That explains. Yeah. Let me send a reminder in our chat, local chat.
That's okay. Less people, the better. I won't embarrass myself.
Come on.
What did you say? Imran Bhai he said he might join later or something?
Yeah.
Okay. Some people are texting me, where's the reminders?
Hmm.
They need like 10 reminders, I guess.
Yeah. Assalamualaikum Mohit bhai, how are you? I guess we'll just wait a few more minutes and then we'll start.
गरम वाला आपका सर मुझे थक गया हूँ यार बहुत से फोन
Assalamualaikum warahmatullah. How's everyone doing today?
Alhamdulillah.
Good, how are you?
Alhamdulillah. Doing well. All right. I think we should go ahead and kick things off, Arslan Bhai.
All right, definitely, inshallah. Yeah, assalamu alaikum everyone. Jazakallah for joining. So under National Sanat-o-Tijarat Department for MKA, this is one of the activity for this year that we are planning on organizing around 5 or 6 webinars for this year, focusing on different skills and trades that different people have been working on, side businesses. In some cases, we will also touch base on some skills development in terms of like resumes, interview preparation, Excel tools and stuff like that. So this is the very first webinar for that series that we will be conducting. So today, Praz Tanveer Bhai, who is the Mohtamim Bukhari MO, he will be presenting the business that he has been working on since 2018 on Turo. But before that, I would like to introduce Imran Ahmed, our Mohtamim Sanat-o-Tijarat for MKA. Imran Bhai, do you have anything to say?
Ji, assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Jazakallah for everyone attending. Arslan Bhai, if we can, I would love to start with the recitation of the Holy Quran. Do you mind kicking us off with the recitation of the Holy Quran, and then we'll do dua, and then we'll get into the meat and potatoes of Faraz Bhai.
Inshallah. Yeah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Amen.
Jazakallah. If everyone can please join in silent dua. Ameen. Okay, everyone. I just wanted to make sure that we got that and we started with the recitation of the Holy Quran and dua. But Jazakallah everyone for attending and coming to this event. I think we're excited because Faraz Bhai is one of our Mohtameen and a pretty dynamic entrepreneur. And I found this out actually while we were attending the FQC in Willingboro. And if anybody attended that event, you would have seen that there were a bunch of cars picking people up from the airport, and some people were handed cars, and nobody knew where these cars came from. And we did a little research and digging, and come to find out that Faraz Bhai is running a successful business on Turo. And so I think it's a testament to the ingenuity of members of our Jama'ah. But we want to make sure that other people are exposed to these types of opportunities. And so this webinar series that you're going to see throughout is going to be really focused on different types of skills and activities. And Arslan Bhai is leading the effort on the webinar side of the equation. Separately, the Department of Sanat-o-Tijarat is doing local ACE conferences, so AMD Conference for Entrepreneurs, if you're familiar with those. And we have a whole suite of events that are happening throughout the course of the year. So inshallah, keep your ears and eyes out for that. And obviously, as people are looking for jobs, assistance, whatever we can do to help, do not hesitate to reach out. So with that, I'm super excited to introduce Faraz Bhai. Arslan Bhai already sort of gave the introduction as needed, but he calls himself the tree planting guy. I think that's the best way to describe Faraz Bhai. But he's a dedicated member of our Jamaat outside of Willingboro, Philadelphia area. Known Faraz Bhai for quite some time, and Faraz Bhai, I think the show is yours, and if you're okay with it, I'll interject with questions here and there, and Arslan Bhai as well.
Yeah, sounds good. Jazakallah for the introduction, and I appreciate the kind words as well. So I guess I'll go ahead. So yeah, I mean, I guess I'm known as the tree planting guy, not the Turo guy, which I appreciate more. But yeah, I don't think I'm anybody special. I mean, I'm just operating some business, on the side, and I have this is not my only business. I have an IT consulting company too, so that's kind of like my primary. But I was doing car rental as well, and I'll get into that during this meeting. But I try to keep my presentations pretty short and leave the time more for like the questions, and we'll go from there. So, I mean, I'm pretty sure everybody knows what Turo is. I don't think most people would join if they didn't really know. But basically, it's just Airbnb of rental cars. So it does compete with like Enterprise, Avis, that type of thing. But basically, most of the reason people choose Turo is for convenience, or they choose it sometimes for the price. And then there's a couple other factors, like you don't necessarily need a credit card. And I think more along those lines, it's a little bit more convenience and diversifying your cars that you're able to rent. And also, in addition to Turo, there's pretty much one other main competitor to Turo. It's called GetAround. It's a little bit different. Basically, GetAround is kind of more like instant booking. Like you can actually unlock the car within 5 minutes of booking the car itself. So that's just one other thing maybe you might come across if you're researching about Turo. So just like a few things about me, I guess how I got started. I started with one car. It was a Honda Accord, typical, Desi car. And I was still working as an IT consultant. And then also I learned kind of like the business mindset by, I worked with my parents in their dry cleaners probably since I was maybe 9 or 10 years old. So I kind of learned the business mentality from them. And then also obviously people in the Jamaat and, mentors I had along the way. So how to make it successful? The one major thing I want to get across is not to get kicked off, because it doesn't take that much to get kicked off of Turo. So you really need to monitor your reviews, make sure the guests are happy. It's just like any other customer relation type of setup. Like you don't want people to be annoyed. Nobody's ever going to come back to you if you have bad ratings. It's all about that. It's like any other business. And then obviously, saving money where you can. You don't want to take your cars to the dealership for everything. The nickname for dealership is called stealership. So you try to save a little bit of money, at least where you can, from independent repair facilities. Obviously, getting reliable cars helps with that. And I would say in this type of business, you should learn about cars. If you're trying to save money, you can actually diagnose them. It'll save you time by dumping all the work on the mechanic and then them charging you double for or taking twice as long just for diagnosing and repairing.
So Faraz, before you jump in much further, because I think this is important,
Yeah.
can you give us a heads up? How do you start, right? So you got a car. Do you register on the Turo website? What do you do?
Yeah, so I mean, baseline to start, I guess it's pretty easy if you have a car. There's a few requirements for Turo itself. Like the car has to be 12 years or newer. It has to be under 130,000 miles, like on the car. And then obviously, in working condition and reliable. So as long as you have a car that's working and it fits those conditions, you can post it on Turo.
And you just go to the website and then register the car. Is there like an approval process? Is there anything that is required?
It's pretty basic. As long as the car has a clean title and it meets those other conditions, you can put it on Turo. It doesn't really take much to make an account. As long as you're approved to drive in the app, you can host in the app too. So there's not much.
Okay, so you get approved to drive. I've got a good license. I don't have a bad record. I've got a car. I'm good to go. Oh, if you can go on mute, whoever's not on mute, or if the admin can put people on mute, that would be appreciated. So those two aspects going, is the process like my car gets posted just like it does on Airbnb? Somebody then, I, as a consumer, say, I'm visiting Philadelphia and your car shows up. And then how does it work? Like in terms of handing over the keys and, that whole 9 yards and liability and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, so I get into the insurance a little bit later, but basically it's not the same as like an enterprise because you're not going to a facility. Like if somebody's flying in, for example, you would either meet them in person or you would, leave the keys with the car and have some other procedure for that, like either lockbox or you can unlock the car from your phone. And that's kind of like how that key handover works. But there's also like a check-in process in the app. So both the host and the renter have to follow like a check-in process for setting up the reservation. So that's kind of like you have to go through all those channels before you can start driving or like start the trip.
Okay, makes sense. And in terms of payment, right? So you set a rate. Is that a fair way of doing it? It's for your car?
Yeah.
How do you set that rate?
The only thing we can do as a host is just set a daily rate. So like, let's say you have like a large SUV, you put whatever, $75 per day. You get a percentage of the daily rate. And then if you charge a delivery fee for dropping it off at the airport, you also get that as well. But the insurance part, which I'll get into like later as well, determines how much of the sale you get for the reservation. And Turo obviously has all their fees. There's like a Turo fee, trip fee, their insurance. You don't get the insurance, obviously. That just goes straight to Turo's insurance, and then that happens. But the only thing you can adjust as a host to change your income is the daily rate, and then obviously if your car is getting booked a lot, then ideally you would raise the price, and if it's not really getting booked, then you should lower the price. So every market is kind of different. You can't really say one thing fits all or one price fits all. You kind of have to research your market and learn as you go along. It's not just one solution for everywhere.
So if I had a 2020 Honda Accord, okay?
Yeah.
How much is the daily rental rate for something like that? And is it profitable? Like, does it become a profitable business if you just leave a car full time there?
Yeah, so it's also depends on how you how you use the business too. Like if you're able to deliver it to like for airport renters, you definitely get more of a market sometimes, um, depending on like your location again. Like if you're in downtown city, then you may not get as many airport people. You might just have local people renting it. But as far as like an average cost for like a pretty new Honda Accord, it's gonna be around $50 to $60. That's kind of like what you're looking at per day. But obviously there's fees and there's Turo takes a portion of that as well. So it's hard to give you like an exact number. Um, and the main thing that comes into play is the utilization, because your car most likely is not going to be rented 30 days out of the month, right? Majority of the time it's either for like the weekend or like a small trip, and then that's how it goes. So I would say your average is going to be like around 10 to 15 days utilized in the month
Okay, so if I
for
have
like a
this
given
Honda
car.
Accord and I'm utilizing it for 10 days out of the month, that's
Yeah.
$500 of money that came in. How much would I get? How much would Turo get?
Yeah, so that exact question actually comes in a later slide. So I'll definitely answer that in
Okay,
like
perfect.
I don't know if it comes
Sorry to
next or in a
jump the
minute.
gun. We're also getting questions for Azbai in the chat. So just for everyone's benefit, if you can, please put your questions in the chat, and for Azbai, I'll let you take those as is. Okay.
Yeah, I don't even think I see the questions. Oh, I see
No
some
problem.
now.
Either myself or Arslan will read them out to you.
Oh, okay. I mean, I can answer some of these questions now, or because like I'm sure it's going to be part of the question. I think it's better just to answer them toward the end.
Yeah,
That way
so
I can.
I was asking the question, but I think that's unmuted me. So I think I sent the question to Imran. So one of the question is, what is the Turo cut in each reservation? So
Yeah, so that'll come in a minute, and the next. I don't know if it's the next slide or the one after that.
No
But
problem. Keep going for Azbai. You're
yep.
up.
All right. So I put a couple of things like do's and don'ts type of thing. So this is kind of to help people that are brand new into this and give them some idea. But ideally, what I would recommend, I don't want to give people official business advice, but this is just my opinion. But I would not advise people to take like a brand new financed car, specifically even like for Turo, or just a nice car that they really like and use that on Turo as their first car. Just mostly because it's obviously a lot of risk, and you don't really know what you're doing yet. Like it's hard to figure out how the process is without even having much experience. So I would take like a regular car and put that actually on Turo, or even if you have like a newer car and it's already paid off, then obviously that's better. But it just gets a little bit weird when if for any reason there's a total loss on the car. If you have a loan on it and there's gap insurance involved, the gap insurance doesn't cover, and then it's a whole can of worms that you don't really want to deal with. So another thing that you should always keep in mind is not to cancel reservations. So Turo's kind of like algorithm on how they rate like hosts is basically if the host approves rentals automatically, or like they approve 100% of the rentals, and then it gets into like if the host cancels, or if the host doesn't like this renter, basically it goes against you. So you don't want any reason for Turo to say that like, look, this guy is not a good host and we don't really want them on our platform. Another thing I was gonna say is don't rely on this as your full-time income. Like like I said in the beginning, this was kind of like the side thing. If any reason you get kicked off or something happens, you lose the car, then you're pretty much, you're out of luck. Like if you lose a car, you only have one car on there, you have no income right away. And if this is you invested all your money into it, it doesn't make any sense. So when I started, I had some mentors as well, and they advised the same thing, that you should, take your time and research your market, and don't get too invested into it, at least in the beginning. Just learn it first. And kind of the same thing I said earlier, don't assume that your car will not be smoked in, damaged, or abused. Pretty much all of the cars that I've owned, all of these happened. Um, whether it's the nicest car or the crappiest, piece of junk car. If anything is possible. And again, it also depends on the type of renters you get. Usually the airport renters are a little bit nicer to the car, but they're also more demanding. And then the local ones, I guess you can say in North Philly or Philly, may not be as nice to the car. So so you have to keep that in mind. Um,
Yeah. Probably I have a question on that. So you were saying that like you have to maintain a certain rating on Turo when you're hosting. So
yeah.
is there a minimum rating that you need to maintain, and what is that rating?
Yeah, so the main minimum rating is 80% 5-star reviews.
Okay.
So it's kind of like, if you're familiar with eBay, they have a similar type of thing. Anything under 5 stars is not really what they want. So basically, you can just consider anything under 5 stars a negative review. It'll go against you. So your goal is basically to stay above that. Otherwise, you have potential to get kicked off. So you don't want that either.
Okay, so if you get kicked off, is there a time period that during that time period you cannot re-enter the Turo business?
Yeah, at that point, it's kind of like in Turo's hands. They can do whatever they want. They can give you like a probationary time, and then they tell you like, for the next 60 days, you better do way better than what you did in the past. Otherwise, we're just gonna kick you off for good. So it's pretty important to maintain the reviews. Otherwise, there's no point then.
Yep. All right. Got it.
So yeah, like kind of going off what I was saying earlier, make sure to research the market. Every market is different. Some people live closer to the airport, and that may be more beneficial to them. And like I mentioned already, keep your cars maintained and try to utilize more reliable cars, Hondas, Toyotas. I mean, some people they went in thinking that, they could buy their like dream car and then afford it by renting it out, on Turo. But I think that's the wrong mentality, just because of the risk involved. You don't really want to go down a bad road if you don't have to, or have that associated risk either. So just based on that, I'll probably avoid it. What is this? Okay. There was a question on how do you get more participation for getting good reviews. I mean, basically, the easiest way is to keep in contact with the guest. So after the trip, you have option to like give them discounts for like future trips. So you can obviously do that as well, and then that also helps them leaving back a nicer review for like a 5-star or something like that. But so the insurance part is pretty much the main aspect, along with like accidents and stuff like that. So that's another question that just came in. But here's the earnings. So I know this was asked earlier, but basically the insurance deductible kind of decides how much of the earnings you get. So if you choose to have a higher deductible, it's obviously higher risk, but at the end of the day, you get more earnings. So like if you have a $5,000 car and it's a $2,500 deductible, it may not really make sense to have a lower deductible in that case because the car value is so low anyways, and you don't want to put out half the money just to get, you know, $2,500 back. So, in my what I do, and again, this is not, you know, I'm not telling people to do this. This is just my opinion. But what I do, I just do 90%, and I set up with the high deductible. As long as you have like basically, as long as you do things kind of in a safe way, and and you make enough where it doesn't matter, like what I'm trying to say, I guess the risk outweighs the reward. I mean, the reward outweighs the risk in some cases. But if you have a series of like bad accidents and stuff like that, you obviously may be, you know, deterred from doing the higher earnings and want the lower deductible. So that's also, this is something you can choose as a host, whatever you want, whatever you're comfortable with. So you can like start off with like, you know, 80% earning instead with the lower deductible. That way you have more peace of mind, and you can kind of adjust it as you go along. But for my case, I end up just doing the higher deductible just because the car values are so low. So for me, it doesn't really make much sense to do that. And then someone recommended as a first car. I mean, I kind of went through that. Basically, I would recommend something Japanese that's a reliable car. Usually not turbo, and just like a regular motor 4-cylinder. Those are kind of the easiest cars to work on. Usually less things break down, but it's not perfect solution for everything, but it's just a recommendation. And one thing to mention for insurance is Turo has their own insurance, obviously, but it's only for during the trip. It's not for like before the trip if your car is vandalized, or after the trip if something happens. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Um, Also, someone asked the question, which cars are being booked the most in your market? Honestly, it's pretty hard to say. I mean, like it depends on the year too. In the summertime, usually the SUVs and like the bigger cars, like the minivans, those are more um, those are more wanted, I guess you can say, because people travel and go on road trips, you know, like during the holidays. But otherwise, if it's for someone that just wants to, like if their car's in the shop and they need a car really quick, then any car will pretty much work. You know, I have most of the cars are regular four-door sedans and like small SUVs. So it seems like people like SUVs because they think it's safer. In Philly, for whatever reason, they love cars with tinted windows. So like I have a lot of cars with tinted windows now, just because of these people that want it. So I just go to the next one. And yeah, one main thing I wanted to point out is, you know, this isn't really like a passive income. I know maybe the advertising for the webinar was it's passive, but it's just like any other business, you know, like you can't really expect it to be easy. Like you're only going to get however much you put into it. So if you don't put much effort, you're not going to get anything out. But really the most important thing to remember is that it's your business. So if you want it to succeed, you should do the effort to make it succeed. Oh, sorry, I missed one question. What if your car gets damaged or vandalized by the guest? So, I mean, I think that's pretty obvious. It works like a normal insurance claim. You know, like if the deductible is whatever, if your damage is under $2,500, let's say, then Turo's not going to give you anything because that's your deductible. But if it's anything more, or if the car gets totaled, then obviously you'll get the difference. And here's the last slide. I left a nice little extra note for anybody after the presentation. They would have to do some Mukarama work. in order to get a hold of me, but that's okay.
That's a good one. Yeah. Yeah, Jazakallah. I just have a follow-up question on the insurance and the deductible and the percentage that Turo gets. So if you can please go back to that slide.
Yeah.
So on this one, let's say 90% earning you get, and then 2,500 deductible. Is there any other fee that Turo get from each transaction?
Turo makes way more than you either way. That's just a fact. But like they make, like if you look at a normal receipt, if you ever rented a car, Turo charges the guest for a trip fee, which is a Turo trip fee. I don't know what it goes toward. It's probably just for admin costs. And then they charge the insurance if you get insurance, and then they charge the tax. And then if it's a delivery, they're gonna charge you the delivery, but for the delivery costs, a host would get that as well. So like if you charge a guest $50 to deliver to the airport, you actually get the $50. So that's one thing I forgot to mention.
Is it possible if you can walk us through a simple transaction that a guest came, he took the car from location A to location B, and this was the total invoice, and then the breakdown of the invoice. So that just kind of
yes. So the 90% is you only get 90% on the daily fee. You don't get 90% on the tax or anything else. So Turo actually gives you separate invoices. So like for a host, they give you your invoice, and then for the guest, they give them a full receipt which has everything in it, which all the taxes and fees and stuff. Your invoice will only have the daily trip fee. I'm sorry, the daily trip cost, and then if there's a delivery cost, and then that's what you get 90% of that. So that's kind of how they make it easy for you to read it, and so you don't get confused. Like, where's my 90%? Like, why didn't I get 90% of everything? You know what I mean?
Yeah. All right. So you don't have to deal with the guest for any of the transaction. You're just dealing with the company directly.
Yeah, for the finance part, you don't really deal with the guest. The only time you would deal with the guest is if like the guest is complaining, or like you owe them money for like let's say they pick up the car from the airport and you are technically supposed to pay for parking. So you just message the guest and you tell them, it was $10, and then you reimburse them. That's pretty much the only finance part you normally deal with the guest with. Otherwise, you direct them to like Turo, and then they figure it all out.
Okay. Another question that I had was that you mentioned that you put your car on Turo, and out of 30 days, let's say on average, if your car is being rented out for 10 days, so for the rest 20 days, if you don't have a booking, can you use your car for your regular use?
Yes, so you can actually block out the any days you want to use the car. You can block the calendar and then and make it available for you as well. The only thing that ends up happening is that, sometimes it may, like if someone books a car, obviously you can't change it after that, right? You can only block it out before something happens. And then it ends up in the same thing where you don't want to cancel a trip, and then that affects your ratings and all the other stuff too.
Okay. And what is the lead time that like, okay, how much, if someone is booking your car,
Yeah.
like, would it be like right away a notification, or do you get like some notice in advance that like a day, so you can plan accordingly? How does that work?
Yeah, so I kind of explained on the other app called Get Around. That one is like a little bit too fast. It's like instant booking. But with Turo, you can change it and adjust it. You can make it like 1 hour, 3 hour, 12 hour, or 24 hour, and then and kind of adjust it to what works. And even you can change your availability. Like let's say you're not available to deliver a car at 4 a.m. You can set your setting as a host and be like, I'm not available between 12 and 6 a.m. And then no bookings will come in that time range.
So when you say deliver a car, so you would take the car to the person and then like you'll use another car or Uber back home, or like you can leave the car in a public parking lot or something like that. You can do that too.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a couple options. Like, like if you're delivering to the airport, that's kind of the only place where it comes into play. Like, you have to deliver the car, right, and then get back. So either you can take like the train or take an Uber and get back to wherever you live. If you live far, obviously it's a little bit complicated. You need to have other people involved, or Uber, which kind of like defeats the purpose of delivering and charging. But it's kind of just like if you're trying to make more utilization of the car, then you kind of take that into account and put whatever cost is for the Uber, and then just kind of eat the cost and say that you're making the money back from the reservation. But it all depends. It's not a perfect setup. Like, you're not always going to make money on delivery. Like a lot of times for me, or a lot of people, they have to offer free delivery just to get a reservation sometimes in like the slow season. And that's another thing to say, like, it's not really busy all the time. Like right now, Turo is actually pretty slow. So like between, you can say, January until March, like spring break, it's not very busy, at least in my market, just because of a few factors, weather, people not traveling. But if it's like Florida, which is kind of like the opposite, which is where people go, in this weather, then it could be different. So that's another factor.
Okay. Another question that I have is that what about the maintenance? I know that for our own car, we make sure that before winter, we are checking the tires, brakes, tire pressure, like oil change, or all that kind of stuff. But for Turo, is there any requirement from the company that you need to maintain a certain standard so that it does not pose a threat to the renter?
Yeah, it's basically like a lot of states have different state inspections, and they kind of use that as their way to like make some standard. But obviously, if you have like bald tires, you can't rent that, and if a guest complains about it, they'll deactivate your car and then say you have to fix this and get it inspected, and then we'll relist the car. So they obviously don't want any issues, and they want it to be safe. So that's kind of the things they have in place to prevent any problem from happening.
All right.
Well,
Is there a question?
I think it was just a random mic again.
All right. So I'm just going to ask you like a very general overview that, okay, let's say we can take an example for like 1 car, 2 car, 5 car scenario, and then average of the whole year, that if you spare your car just for this purpose, how much per year or per month you can make from those number of cars, and from that money, how much you spend on the maintenance stuff, and then how much is actually going in your pocket as a profit?
That's a very, very hard question because every car is different. Like the maintenance part ends up being a very big factor, because if you have a car and then the transmission, goes bad, then you're pretty much in negative the whole year then at that point. But I would say, to give you like some general safe number, you can make between 200 to 400 at least profit from a car, if you wanted to, like as like a safe number, and that's including most of the maintenance in it. But if there's any breakdown, which happens, I've had I think six engine replacements I have had to do. So but I'm also playing with fire in some ways because I'm using older cars.
Mhm.
So in my case, I'm learning the hard way. But if you use a reliable car like Honda Accord, most likely the engine's not gonna really, mess up on you that easily. Not until like 300,000-400,000 miles. Um, but yeah, I would say that's kind of like an average you can get. But that all incorporates to how much time and effort you put into it. Like if you just say I have a car, I can make this much. It's not really the case. You have to put a lot of time into it as well. Like you have to meet these people you know, if you're giving them the keys in person. There's other ways you can give them the keys or make some other plans. But like I have some remote unlocking cars as well, so I can just unlock it from my phone when the guest arrives. But like you need to make sure you value your time, not just the number of your cars, because if you just go by cars, you're probably just going to be getting overworked, um, and that's not really what the goal is. The goal is to have some free time as well. But I know a lot of people that are pretty much just working all the time as well and trying to do the business. But at some point, you need to keep in mind how much time you're putting in and if it's worth your time as well. Like if you're like a doctor, right? And then it may not be worth your time to like even do this because like how much money are you going to actually gain from it? Like you'll gain some money, but it's really not worth it in some scenarios. But if you have like just a regular job and an extra car, then I guess in that case it's perfectly fine. But you don't want to go into this and like take your mom or dad's car that's like brand new and then put that much risk on the table. You have to think about it a little bit too.
Right.
Um, Someone asked about the difference between Turo and Sixt, but that's pretty usual. That's just like a normal enterprise and like Turo. Turo is peer to peer, like person to person, and then Sixt is kind of like a proper business direct to consumer.
Hmm. So when you started with one car. How many cars do you have now on Turo?
So there's a lot of cars that are broken. So it's probably like 17, 18 around there that are
Okay.
usually online, but as long as you're not kicked off, then you're fine.
So those cars that you added afterwards, did you buy used cars, and like what was the average mileage on those cars? And did you finance them or just like bought on cash?
Yeah, all the other ones, like myself, I just bought them used. I never financed any cars. I mean, there was one car which I financed, but that was like a family van that we had a while ago. But then, it got paid off and then I got rid of it. But I would say as far as like if you have a financed car, it just gets a little bit tricky if there's a total loss, because insurance may not cover the value of the car if the mileage is increasing so fast. It's basically renting a car is commercial, right? And buying a car financed is a personal. Like it's not meant to be used for commercial use. So that's why they don't pay out like a totaled car that was damaged from renting. And then also gap insurance, if you're familiar, won't cover the difference either, just
Mm.
because it's being used for commercial purpose.
Mm. All right, that's great.
Oh,
Like,
someone mentioned a good question I forgot to add, uh, about trackers. So I have trackers in all of my cars too, and mostly I have it. In the beginning, I had it in there for fun, just to see, make sure where my cars are. Some were in Florida, some were in who knows where. I was like making sure I can find them. But the main purpose is pretty much as like a backup to make sure you know where your car is if it gets stolen. I had some situations where I had to call the police and and work with them to retrieve my car.
mm,
And I'm sure people saw Operation Repo and like other TV shows like that. I was the repo guy and literally getting the cars myself back from these annoying renters that don't want to pay. And so if you want some excitement in your life, you can also join Turo for that reason.
Yeah. So 17 cars that you have and you maintain, let's say on average, how much time do you spend every day or per week? How many hours?
Time, I mean, the maintaining part, it all comes down to how good the car is maintained. Like if it doesn't need that much work, then all you have to do is the oil change. Then that doesn't really take much effort or time. But I mean, it's hard to put a number on it, but I would say you spend at least 2-3 hours just in the cleaning aspect sometimes. Because the car is coming back, like the guests aren't really going to clean them for you. That's your job. You have to get it cleaned and then prepared for the next person if if there's a gap, obviously, in the time. So cleaning and preparing the car for the renter, then you have to take pictures before each trip. So it is a little bit time consuming. So that's why I was trying to push the fact that it's not really passive. This is more a pretty involved like business that you have to have some, you have to be on top of it basically.
Yeah, Jazakallah. Anybody else has any questions? If you do, please feel free to unmute yourself and you can ask your question, or you can send your question in the chat box as well, and we can read them.
Yeah, really quick. Do you have to buy the commercial insurance for your rental?
So you don't have to buy commercial insurance because Turo provides the insurance. So that's where this whole deductible / earning situation comes in. So the higher deductible, the more of the earnings that you actually get from the rental.
We have a question from Rashid Mahmood Bhai.
Assalamu
alaikum.
Rajbhai, I want to ask you, I know that you're working with the share market, which is the Turo, but since it is the business, I'm thinking you don't have to get a business license for that, correct?
No, you don't need any business license for it. Basically, it's kind of like sole proprietorship at some point. Like you don't need a LLC or anything like that. You can still put it on your taxes as like just filing individually or married. It doesn't matter. So you don't need that.
Okay. Second question I want to ask about I put that in a chat too, about the gas related question. Now let's say if the renter took your car and renter is driving, they're responsible for the gas, but when they deliver your car, are they supposed to fill up a tank, or they can just deliver you the empty car and then you're responsible for it?
Yeah, you're not responsible. The guest is supposed to return the car at the same fuel level. And then if they don't, you basically submit the receipt to Turo, and then Turo reimburses you. They try to get it from the guest, obviously first. They submit it they basically make an invoice, they submit it to the guest, and then they either approve the thing, but even if they don't approve it, like the guest doesn't approve it, Turo still will step in and pay for the gas. I've found that giving people with half tank usually returns the car with a half tank because people don't have money for full tank for some reason, at least the local ones.
One last question, since my hand is already raised. Regarding the car, so what I was gonna ask is, now after a while, since you've been running this business since 2018, now since you already have 17 cars, do you have to get somebody helping with you, or is it just you? And
Yeah. So I do have people helping me. So I actually got some guys from the Jamaat too that are helping me as well. I mean, technically, if I really wanted to, I could do it myself, but I'm doing other work. So, I have my own IT business too, and that obviously takes time. And then you know, I don't, for me, it doesn't make sense to do all of the work myself just because I probably, IT is my main business anyways. So for me, I'm just putting more time toward that. But obviously in the beginning, I was doing everything my own. I think up until maybe 10 cars, that's kind of when it gets a little bit busy. But mostly it's busy if you have to deliver. Like if you're not doing any deliveries, it's not really that bad. Um, like if you have one central location where they're all coming to, then you can more or less manage it. But obviously it depends on how much, help you have and if it's worth it. Because obviously it gets to a point where, like if you have hired help, like you're not making, I guess, as much of that income you want, right? So you have to figure out what the right amount is for you and see how much of your time is worth the, whatever amount of money per hour you want to call it that you want to take home.
Jazakallah.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we have any other questions?
Yeah,
There's
well, did you give it a try to get around, or you are only putting your cars on Turo?
Yeah, actually I have the cars on Getaround as well, as on Turo, mostly because Getaround has the remote unlocking feature. So I pretty much just put the cars on Getaround to be able to unlock the cars from my phone because they have like some better deal to be able to add that to the car. But from what I've seen, it seems like the quality of renters on Getaround is not as good on Turo. It's not as good as Turo. So that's kind of like the main thing. And I've had a lot of vandalism and other issues on Getaround. So a lot of people try to break into your cars because they know the key is in the car. So then that's another annoying issue. I just had one car that took 6 weeks to get a stupid a little piece of window, like the vent glass window. It took 6 weeks to get it, and for some reason it cost $600 because there's no piece of glass in the U.S. It had to come from Germany because it's Volkswagen.
Yeah. We have a question. We have a hand raised by Arshad Qureshi Sahib.
Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. I wrote my question in the chat also, but my question is that, for example, if somebody gets into an accident in your car and they turn around and say that you did not maintain the car, for example, the brakes were not working right, can you be held liable for the damages or the accident?
I think that mostly comes into play if the insurance deems it that way, not really the guest. Like the guest can say whatever they want to say, but unless it's like proven, then it's not really their word against, you know, the insurance company. So obviously, you shouldn't have bad brakes on the car or like bad tires. So if they find that to be the problem, then technically, yeah, you could be liable and you may not get the full amount of your claim. Or I never had that happen where it was like a total loss and they blame me. So alhamdulillah, I haven't had to deal with that. But the best way is not to get into that situation.
We have 6 minutes to go before we conclude this webinar. So
There's a lot of questions in the chat, so if you want, I can just go through
I
them.
for some reason I am unable to see those questions. Maybe they're just coming to you.
Maybe there's like 20 I haven't even looked at yet, so
Oh, wow.
I can start looking at those.
Yeah, please go ahead.
So this one, Harris asked, how far in advance do people book your car? So pretty much sometimes it's been like up to a year. People plan their like Christmas trips early. So that's definitely happened. I haven't seen that. I mean, I've seen that happen. I already mentioned that I would recommend putting trackers in your cars. Doesn't necessarily prevent theft, but at least it helps you find the car, which is equally as good. Most popular booking time is probably Friday and like Sunday, Mondays. I would say the busiest. The beginning of the weekend, end of the weekend. That's kind of the busy time. And Sunday's hard too because there's a lot of Jamaat events going on. So you already mentioned about the responsible for gas. Tax deductions. Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of tax deductions when you're using any car. So the mileage is probably your main deduction if you do your taxes that way. You can obviously do it by receipts too, but mileage, in my case, is easier just to go by that. When did you start? Are there any market changes before and after pandemic? Before pandemic, it was actually way better. The business was like probably double before the pandemic, which is why most of it grew before then, and then it kind of got stuck with it at that point. So I had all these cars for a while now, but I already mentioned about buying commercial insurance. You don't have to buy that because Turo provides it. Mileage requirement, I mentioned should be under 130,000, and you can get that pretty easily on the Turo website. Do you think this was a COVID business? Yeah, in some ways, Turo was a little bit busier during COVID, but the quality of the renters was actually lower because people were flying less and they were putting crazy miles on your cars. So people were doing basically trips to Florida in my cars regularly. And I was basically doing an oil change every month for some of the cars, which is kind of ridiculous because oil change should last 4,000 or 5,000 miles. One question is, would it be better to drive Uber to make extra 5-10K than Turo? I think, honestly, Uber is actually really good. I've even done Uber too, so I don't see any issue with using Uber as well. I think Uber obviously takes up more of your time, so if you have more time and you can use it, Uber is probably a better solution. If you have an extra car and you don't have time, then maybe Turo in that scenario is better. Let's see. Okay, we already talked about the tax stuff. And one other question, how did you get from 1 to 17? I mean, that's kind of, straightforward. You just go back and you, I guess, invest back into your business. So that's not that hard to answer. I think that's most of the questions. So.
Perfect, right on time. Jazakallah, Frostbite, for your time and your patience with all these questions and providing us all the information. Definitely very helpful. And again, just to remind everyone that if you come up with a question after the presentation, you have to plant a tree, right?
Yeah, let me go back to this. I wanted to leave it at this slide, but we went back.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have a lot of I figured I'm doing a presentation, might as well give my own department some extra notice. But yeah, Jazakallah again for giving me the opportunity. But
yeah,
hopefully some people benefit from it.
Yep, absolutely. So if anybody else come up with a question afterwards, you can direct your question directly to Frostbite. He's very active in Jamaat. I'm sure you can find his contact information. If you have any trouble, then feel free to reach out to me. Motmim Sahib Imran Bhai. You can reach out to any of us, and then we can get you in contact with Frostbite. All right. With that, it's 10 o'clock. 1 hour we are into this session. So, Jazakallah and have a good night.
All right. Assalamu alaikum.
Allah Hafiz.